While I've got this Scar ZVX8 up here to recone, I was getting ready to do the recone on it, start doing the videos on it. But last night, a guy messaged me and was talking about voice coils, and he tried to tell me I was incorrect in the size of the voice coil that goes in this, and these are 2.5 inch coils, not 2 3/8 inch. And I did quite several of these. So I told him, like I know what I'm talking about. And he told me that I was just incorrect. So what I'm going to show you here, I'm going to use this coil as an example. I'm going to measure it right here on the spot. That's a 2 3/8 inch voice coil. That's what the inner diameter of the former is. I'm going to just pop it right in here. As you can see, it has hardly any slack to it whatsoever. This is a 2 3/8 inch voice coil. This is the one that's actually going in it with the greater wind height than this one. And as you can see, it fits this gap really tight, not a lot of slack. So I just want to clear that up. I mean, I hate to have to make a video to, to prove that point, but anyways, I just want to do that. Now, the same guy that had messaged me and was talking about voice coils, he had watched a video that somebody had put up, and he was like, well, if you could get aluminum coils, why not use those? Because you'll get greater X-Max and X mechanical out of them. And that's absolutely not true. And I tried to explain that to him, and he tried to confirm what that person that made the video had said when they did a video on voice coils. Now, he sent me the link to it. I went and watched it, and I couldn't believe that that person said some of the things they did when they were talking about voice coils, especially that. They said that if flat aluminum wire gives you greater X mechanical and greater X max, and that's just not true. I mean, the type of wire has no bearing on your X max or X mechanical. So I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to try to clear that up. So this is a high temp copper coil, and it's 40 millimeters. And so let's say I take another voice coil, set it right beside it, it's identical, and it has 40 millimeters and it's flat aluminum. All right, so you got the center of the gap's 20, and whatever the thickness of your top plate is, and you divide that in half, and you come up here and you make your mark so that you put the center of the coil in the center of that gap. Let's say this coil has 12 millimeters of X-Max, right? One way, linear, and it's copper. Well, I use the same coil in aluminum. It's still the center of the coil is still 20 millimeters, and that center of that coil is still going to ride in the center of that gap, whether it's copper or aluminum. It's only going to have the same amount of linear X-Max. It doesn't matter what the wire, what the wire is. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's, aluminum or copper or CCA or whatever. I mean, it's still, what determines your X-Max is the wind height of the voice coil and the thickness of the, this top plate. An X mechanical, is going to be, figured in with, the wind height as well, like the depth of the motor you have before it can bottom out, or if your coil's too short, to jump in the gap and so forth. The wire type does not. That's crazy that they said that. Like, I can't believe that person said that with as much content as they put out. It just, that blows my mind. When you talk about differences in like wire material, like aluminum is like about a third is, the weight of copper. So the moving mass would be, drastically decreased by going with aluminum. Copper is a better conductor, and, aluminum's only about 2/3 or so as conductive as copper. Copper typically will yield, a better BL than, aluminum wire. Not in all cases, I would say, but, typically. Also, too, sometimes when you're using aluminum wire, when you start shedding moving mass, it can affect sensitivity and so forth like that. Also, like when I was talking about, the BL could be altered because of the length of the wire in the gap. Like the amount of turns and so forth changes, depending upon what type of wire you use and how many, how much wire is in the gap. like the LE and so forth. Yeah, I'm gonna do a whole video on voice coils and try to clear up a lot of that. So if you guys have seen that video, then you know the wire type doesn't matter, because you know if you're using like 40 millimeters of copper or 40 millimeters of aluminum, the X Max and shit's still the same. You know, that's just, anyways. One last thing I'll go over with this. This is like I said, you know, it's a 2 and 3/8 inch coil. When you go to buy parts for, like, say these or Toros, or you know, like SDRs and so forth, some of the kickers and whatnot that use, you know, oddball size coils like 2 and 3/8 inch or 2 and 5/8 inch. One of the problems you're going to run into, like I had to modify the spider, because you can't buy coil opening spiders. I think, well, I say that, but I think George over at Lord of Base has got some scar spiders in that are red, and they do have a 2 and 3/8 inch, but they're like a 7 point something inch spider, which, you know, they don't fit these. So what you have to do is modify parts. And if you buy spiders, for instance, and cones, for instance, like with these, and you buy a 2.5 inch coil opening spider, what you're going to have is you're going to have like a gap between the former and the inside of the spider right there, you know, like this, and then you're going to have to try to fill that in, and it can create a weak point there. So I'll, you know, like I have a bunch of 2 inch, and then like I just neck them out a little bit to fit, you know, like nice and tight over, well, not too tight, but, you know, nice and tight so it can still move over the coil. That way, all you got to do is just take the spiders when you get them, and when you get them undersized, and then you just put the coil upside down on them and find it on your ridge, and then you can mark it, you know, just center it up, and then you can mark it, and you can cut it out, or, you know, you can eyeball it. When you set it on there, you can see where you need to cut, and you cut it, and then you can cut it a little bit short, and then, you know, you can sand it out, or whatever, trim it out a little more until it fits, you know, nice on that. Same way with the cones. Typically you can get away with buying a 2.5 inch coil opening on the cone when you're doing like these 2 and 3/8 inch, for two reasons. A lot of times the opening is not exactly 2.5 inches, might be a little bit shorter, so it's not much of a gap. And if it is a little bit of a gap, like I told you in an old video, you can do like DD and the rest of them used to do, and they may still do it. Use a piece of rope, and what you do is you glue it to the former and the cone, and then you just lay the rope down in there, and then just trim it so that it touches the other one, and then the other end, and then what you do is put a little bit of glue to the rope to the former, and then the rope to the cone, and just do it in a couple spots, you know, and then hit it with some accelerator or whatever you're using, let it set up a little bit, and then you can go back in and you can, you know, flood that, and then, you know, it will encapsulate that rope and make, you know, a nice strong joint. So I just want to give you a little bit of a pointer there while I was doing this. So anyway, since I've been touching this, I'm going to wipe it down one more time, and I've got everything set out, and we're just going to go through the recomb process on this. And like I said, I'll break it up like I always do into some videos, but I'll do them quick, because I've just got a lot of free time now. I've got a little more free time now that I'm caught up. So I just wanted to go over and address that. You know, like I'm not going to call the people's name out, but, you know, the person was wrong about the coil size, and him and the person that made the video was wrong about the type of wire you use and so forth. So I hope that clears it up. And like I said, if you have any questions, just ask me, and then I'll make a whole video after this on voice coils and stuff. So I'll see you when I get this stuff cleaned back up.